feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming to you Thursday morning. It's February 19th. And we're back because the All-Star break is over. The Wolves have 26 games remaining on their schedule, all to be completed over the next 52 days. It's pretty much a sprint from here, playing on average, I guess, every other night. And I do think it's one of those, it is the time of year where the schedule can really impact night-to-night results, which can, makes a real difference amongst teams like the Wolves, who are very close in the standings to teams right above them or right below them. As we enter the post-All-Star break reality, the Wolves are currently the 6th seed, 1.5 games behind the Denver Nuggets, who are currently sitting the 3 spot, and 1.5 games ahead of Phoenix, who is in the 7th seed right now. The Wolves went 18-8 after the All-Star break last season in those final 26 games, which did give them, I think, real momentum that we felt as they hit the postseason last year. And frankly, the type of momentum it feels like they're going to need again this year to get the ball rolling in the playoffs. So today feels like a good time to look at the Wolves' rest of season schedule. And we're going to do that in a stupid way by drafting their schedule for the rest of the season. I'll explain how we're going to do that in a second. But I got, Chris Ryan here, Wolves beat writer with me. Chris and I did something like this last year. And because you reminded me of it, we're gonna do it again. And I think it's a good time to talk about the schedule the rest of the way. Welcome back from All-Star break. How are you?
I'm doing good. Walking through the slush to get here today. Always a treat. Doing good. Quick plug at the top of the show here.
Sure.
I'm going to be signing books, copies of Ant at the Barnes & Noble in Uptown, Saturday at 2 p.m. Come on out. You can bring copies if you already have them. They prefer, that you buy extra ones, hopefully. But if you want to come out, get your copy signed, chat Wolves, whatever, come on by Barnes & Noble Uptown, 2 p.m. Thank you for letting me do that.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. Like that's a cool thing for you to do. You wrote a book, and you're doing a book signing. Like that's and not your first time doing it, but we're recording this on Thursday, so this coming Saturday, that's February 21st at 2 p.m. Get over there to Barnes & Noble in Uptown and hang out with Chris and his pretty orange book that's right behind your head there.
Slightly blurred, but it's still there.
It's camera work.
Focus, soft focus in the background. Yep. All right, let's get into this draft. I am very excited. For some reason, I feel like I nerd out over the schedule more than anybody. Either not so much on the beat. You guys pay attention to the schedule, and you guys know the schedule matters. No. But I think one of the disconnects that I often have with fans on social media is the schedule matters, like the pacing of it, the back-to-backs, the 4 and 5, 4 and 6, the crisscrossing country on a road trip. Like that stuff matters to the quality of play and the quality of the product that you see on the floor. Think back to 2 years ago when they had the number 1 defense. In the middle of the season, it lagged. If you remember, the month of January was not their best month that season. Why was that? Because they were crisscrossing the country all month on road trips. So the amount of effort and things that they needed on a nightly basis to play that kind of defense, they didn't have it in that particular month. They got it back later in the season, All-Star break, all that stuff. And then in the playoffs, you obviously are resting a little more. But the schedule, as I often say, matters. And I think it's going to matter a lot here because in doing this exercise and seeing how the quality of opponents stack up here, this time last year, they had one of the easiest schedules the rest of the way.
Yep.
Now they have one of the hardest schedules the rest of the way. I believe Tankathon had them, which is just adding up the win percentage, 3rd.
Yep.
Denver
and
Oklahoma
toughest
City. Schedule. Denver and Oklahoma City 1 and 2. Yeah. But the Wolves have the 3rd toughest schedule by win percentage the rest of the way here. So they're going to have to bring it most of the rest of the way here, which for this team maybe isn't such a bad thing.
Right.
That they're going to have that effort.
One other metric to use, and I'm kind of stealing this from John Hollinger. He wrote about the tanking teams, and he wrote about how many times they're playing all the other teams.
Yeah.
Like the playoff teams in the mix. And there's 6 teams who are like really tanking right now: Memphis, Indiana, Brooklyn, Utah, Washington, and Sacramento. Hollinger called them the egregious 6.
Yeah.
In his thing, and he was like, there's the Pelicans and the Bucks who are like kind of doing, but like they're actually still trying. Like the Pelicans don't have their pick,
right,
so they're not incentivized to tank. Milwaukee's whatever Milwaukee's doing right now, but not really moving in that sort of direction. So there's those 6 at the bottom, and the Wolves only played 3 games against those 6 teams, which is the least in the league, tied with Boston, who only plays those 6 teams 3 times. But there's something Portland, I mean, who's not in the Wolves range in the standings, but Portland plays those 6 teams 8 times. Philadelphia plays those 6 teams 8 times. Like that's what an easy schedule is. That's a third of your games.
Significant difference. 30 of your remaining games against teams that don't have any interest
actively trying to lose.
And despite what Adam Silver said over the All-Star break and the fines that were levied against the Jazz and the Pacers, it is the time of year when teams are really tanking. Any little nick that guys may have on the injury report, just sit them out.
Right.
And the Wolves did benefit from that down the stretch last season. There were plenty of times where they were facing teams that had no interest in winning, and it led to that 17-4 stretch, in part to that 17-4 stretch. So that totally matters, and there are not a lot of those games on the schedule, as you pointed out, the rest of the way. So they play
Indiana, Utah, and Memphis. Of those, those are the only of those 6 teams. But like the Lakers and the Rockets, they have both of them have 6 games against those teams.
Yeah, so right there, they've got a 3-game leg up on the Wolves in terms of wins the rest of the season here.
And they're already ahead of the Wolves in the standings. I mean, marginally. Yeah. But yeah, that matters. The quality of your schedule, the strength of your schedule. But I think what has been kind of interesting for us to go into is there's other stuff too, like of what makes a win or loss more likely at this time of season. Back-to-backs, obviously, home road, but it kind of gets, I'm curious when we start talking about it, like the April games are always funny. Like you don't know what a team is going to be. Is a team going to be playing for their life on April 8th? Like I think they have a game against the Rockets on April 10th. Like a couple days before the season. That game could be hugely important to both Houston and Minnesota, or I would say like almost as likely it's nothing.
To your point, they have games in April against Philly and Orlando, who are currently 6 and 7 in the East. So those are 2 teams that could potentially be playing for that 6th seed in the East that are really trying to win at that point in the season. So that absolutely matters. And so you had a unique way that we're going to draft this.
So last year when we did this, we just drafted wins. Most likely we were just trying to rack up. Chris picked a game, I picked a game. We're trying to rack up the most wins the rest of the way. And that led to a lot of conversations about, will it be easier against the Wizards or will it be easier against, the Jazz?
Right.
And I think it'd be more interesting to draft losses, the most likely games. So the first overall pick will be, the most difficult circumstance that the Wolves have, maybe on the road playing a really good team, whatever. That's how we're going to kind of handle that. I know that kind of sounds negative, like we're drafting and cheering for Wolves losses, but I think it'll make for a better conversation, and we'll be able to have conversations about, how do the Wolves match up against the Pistons, who we haven't seen them play at all, versus, a Houston or something like that. I think it'll focus our conversation on the most interesting games for the rest of the season, but also highlight there's a lot of hard games here the rest of the way, and it'll be fun to dive into that. So does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Drafting losses.
And then anybody in the comments, I don't know if we'll be keeping track of this the rest of the way, but
I'm writing it down.
You're writing it down.
All right,
all right, great. So we'll end up with a
Dane,
record of
Chris.
This. And what does the winner get to do something at the end of the year?
Let's do
the Bill Simmons cousin Sal thing was always whack him with a Subway sandwich at the end of the year.
Okay, I don't want to do that. How about our first wherever the playoff game is, we'll do dinner.
All right.
Dinner on the line. Bet.
Got it.
I think you killed me in this last year. So well, but I don't know. Maybe I'm a losses guy. And I'll be able to do this. I don't know how do you want to have the first overall pick?
Sure, I'll take
I'm a
the first
gracious
overall
host.
pick, and I will take March 15th at OKC, assuming that they will be relatively healthy by that point in time. The Wolves have won in Oklahoma City in recent years, but I just feel like you take the defending champs in their building, where the Wolves have lost, if you go back to the playoffs, at least 4 straight games in that building.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna stick with that one and just kind of go chalk and just say the Thunder on the road March 15th is an L.
Yeah, I would also note that's the 4th game of a 4-game road trip.
Yep.
For the Wolves. That's what kind of pushed it over to me. I mean, to get to my pick, I'm going to say Denver on actually next Sunday, March 1st.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one I had next highest on there. But the fact that the OKC game was the 4th game of a 4-game road trip. It's Oklahoma City. I know Denver's beat them this season, whereas the Wolves have beat Oklahoma City. But I thought the other factors led to that Oklahoma City game clearly being the hardest game that the Wolves have for the rest of the season. And Denver, I don't think is going to be at 100% by March 1st either, in terms of the rest of the roster. But that's who I went with for my first pick. Was that this game that you had second toughest?
It was not.
Okay.
So my board is still intact here.
There we go.
I'm going with April 2nd at Detroit.
Yeah, that was my third one.
And based on how the last couple of years have gone and the way Cade has played against the Wolves in the last couple of years, it doesn't feel like the best matchup for the Wolves. I know they won that game last year here, the one that the fight kind of the fight broke out in.
That was a fight.
It was good. It was a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, NBA fights.
Yeah.
Any NBA fight.
Your hockey writer is showing.
Aside from the Malice in the Palace, any NBA fight has to go in quotation marks. Right. Yes. But I don't know. I feel like it's a bad match. What do you think?
No, that's what I had down third on my list as well. I think what's interesting about it is they haven't played Detroit this year.
Right.
And
they're getting them twice in the span of, they play them on March 28th here.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's 1, 2, 3, like 5 days later, they get them again.
So we just haven't seen them play each other. Those are going to be 2 games against those teams. I mean, I don't know if I feel strongly that like Detroit is coming out of the East over Boston or anything, but like they're one of, if not the best teams in the Eastern Conference. The Wolves haven't played them. They're an extremely physical team. It's going to be one of those Julius Randle's running into a wall sort of games, right? Rather than Julius Randle has the big physical advantage. I always have my eye open to that. So yeah, I think Detroit's going to be an interesting opponent. And yeah, I think you got to take that. You got to take the road game up there high. I did write down though for that one, that's on April 2nd. After that, Detroit only has 5 more games in the season.
They could have it wrapped up by then.
They've got a 6-game lead on the 1 seed right now.
Right.
You know, like,
believe me, that thought entered my head too. Of Detroit literally might not. They just might be mailing it in at that point.
Again, I don't know. 5 games, probably not completely. They don't strike me as a mail it in.
Right. You can't. I don't think you can start mailing it in or like resting guys or whatever on April 2nd. I don't think you want to do that if you have designs on a deep playoff run. You want to keep it. You want to keep it somewhat humming by that point. When you get into the last game of the season or the last 2, that's maybe when you say, hey, everybody take it easy, take a night off.
I think you're right.
But I still think by April 2nd, they're still going to be playing relatively hard, even if they already have it clinched or whatever.
I'm with you. I had it down as my third highest one as well, but something to note there. It's also the front end of a back-to-back for the Wolves. I don't know. Somebody said that. Whatever. I'm trying to make it sound worse for you. My second pick is another road game, March 22nd at Boston. Did you have that above Denver?
I had that below Denver, actually. Okay. I had Denver. I would have taken Denver first, but this was next on my list at Boston.
Yeah, I mean, at Boston, haven't won there in forever. I'm not sure how relevant that is. But, you know, that's another physical team, one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. Road game. And in that, the next one on my list is actually a home game after that.
Oh, you don't want to tip your hand.
Yeah. But I took, I figured, I thought it was safe.
They ended the streak in Toronto this year, so maybe they end the streak in Boston this year.
Oh, absolutely. Well. And for the record of all of these, like, we're highlighting all the reasons why it's more likely to be a loss. But
right,
I mean, I don't know. Like, are the Wolves even like point spread wise? Are they going to be heavy dogs in that game? No.
By the way, to our point, these are 4 games that we've listed off that you could easily see the Wolves losing all 4 of these. And I would say, I guess I might as well just go all in with the Pistons. I'll go March 28th at home against Detroit. I'll take both Pistons games here.
I'm regretting giving you the first pick.
So yeah, all the reasons we stated before. Maybe the Pistons are a bad matchup, but maybe the Wolves. And I'll get to this when we get to a certain opponent a little later. But as we know, there are certain opponents out there that the Wolves take personally. Mm-hmm. And when they take a certain opponent personally, they tend to play their best. Maybe coming off of the fight last year, maybe Detroit has gotten on their list.
Yeah.
We know Phoenix was in previous years. Denver, although those 2 teams, it hasn't felt like it this year. But maybe Detroit kind of takes one of those spots of, we don't really like these guys.
Yeah.
So that's maybe
there's a
something I'm a little fearful
Ant factor
of.
too.
Cade Ant factor, but just the general, these guys tried to fight us in our own building last year. Let's go back at them again this year.
I'm not sure Detroit is all that likable of a team, period. I don't think they have a high Q score around that. And that's cool. I think that's a cool thing about them too. It is interesting though. Like the Wolves have not played them this year. So I'm curious for those games for, if no other reason, that. My third pick is March 11th in LA against the Clippers. That is a back-to-back for the Wolves.
Oh, this is good.
I don't know what's going on exactly with the Clippers. It's a back-to-back. That doesn't, that's not an LA back-to-back. They play the Lakers the night before that game. The Clippers did just beat them by 20 recently. I think if we get a really dialed version of Kawhi Leonard, this team, like every team in the NBA, is going to struggle to be able to guard him. So, not the opponent with the best record left on the board here, but the back-to-back factor and the Kawhi matchup, I think makes a big deal to me there.
I really struggle when I was making my list. I really struggled with where to slot the remaining Clippers games, just based on what they have left on the roster, but also how the Wolves looked against them right before the break here. I was like, I don't know what to do with these Clippers games. That was probably the 2 games where I just couldn't find, like, okay, I'm definitely putting this on my big board here. Those feel like true wild cards. I tend to think that I think the Wolves are going to take care of business in those games. So I slotted that. I had that down my list a little farther than you did.
Looking over the back-to-back, which is
right.
somewhat.
Now they've been very good. I'll say this. They've been very good on the tail end of back-to-backs over the last several years. Like, they have one of the best records in the league. I think it's 4th best record in the league over the last 3-4 years on the tail end of back-to-back. So they do a good job with that. And I will say this, just a general note about the schedule. They have 4 back-to-backs remaining the rest of the season. 2 of those are in the same city, the one in LA, and then there's a home back-to-back here in Minnesota. Only 2 of them have travel, which leads me into my next pick.
There you go.
Which is April 3rd at Philadelphia, which is the tail end of a back-to-back. And I am going to, good team on the road, a team that's likely going to be playing for something in their building. And so April 3rd at Philly, I think, could be a tough one for them.
Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, and let's put together a daily fantasy lineup over at Prize Picks for the Wolves-Mavs game this Friday night. Both Cooper Flagg and Julius Randle are set at more or less than 38.5 points plus rebounds plus assists in that game. I thought it was interesting that those 2 were exactly the same. I'm going to say more than 33.5 for Flagg in that game. See if the Wolves are able to guard him. Sometimes some of those bigger players are a struggle for them. And I'm going to say less than 33.5 points plus rebounds plus assists for Randall. I do like Randall more than 3.5 assists on there. You can do that one instead, but I don't as much see the big scoring and the big assisting game for him. So yeah, choose one of those two for Randall there, and then let's throw in Dante DiVincenzo more than 2.5 made threes in that game. That's going to be my prize picks lineup for the Wolves. Return to action on Friday. You can now also pick against the spread and team totals over at Prize Picks as well. The Wolves are currently 12.5-point favorites for that game. You know the drill. There's always something going on over at Prize Picks. If you don't yet have a Prize Picks account, all you have to do is use the promo code Dane. When you sign up, you'll receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks.com, Prize Picks app. Use promo code Dane. That was my next one up on my board as well. It's the front end of a back-to-back for Philadelphia. And it's a Minnesota Detroit back-to-back that they have there.
Yeah.
And like the Sixers are a team that rests players. And like I doubt in both of those games against Detroit and Minnesota that the Sixers are going to be putting out like their full roster.
Full roster. Yeah.
Do you prioritize Detroit in that spot? If you're Philadelphia, do you prioritize Minnesota? I don't know. I had it up there. That was the next one up on my board as well. It also crosses into the April range where makes me go a little, who knows what this is going to look like 5 or 6 weeks from now. But I had that one up there as well. They have 2 against Philly here the rest of the season, right?
They do play Philly twice.
Yeah, they play Philly again at home. So another team that they haven't seen yet this season. Embiid, VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, all of those things. Will Paul George be back from suspension by then? Maybe, I don't know.
Oh, that's a good. I didn't even think of that, but I think so. I think maybe for that game. Yeah. Well, what was it? 20?
It was 25. Probably close to that game.
Probably close to that. Yeah. So, I'll say this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They play only 5 games after that April 3rd game against the Wolves. So he probably will be back by that point in time. Yeah.
I would.
At least
I would
for that
so.
one. Yeah. At least for that one.
Like I said, will be interesting to see them play Philly here twice. The rest of the season, another big team, another big guy to need to guard. Next on my board, I went with March 10th at the Lakers. I found myself like wanting to push that down further because you're going to get a juiced up version of not only Ant but the whole Wolves team.
Yeah.
I do think there's a little counterbalance there too, where like the Lakers have some of that themselves. Where they're going to turn it up a little bit more for Minnesota, I would assume.
I think so. I think you're right. And the Lakers did a good job. If you remember last year, the Lakers played really well down the stretch last year as well.
True.
And that's how they got to the 3 seed. So they might find a little bit of juice here in the final weeks as LeBron probably starts turning it up at this point in the year.
I mean, they will as a team, that they very much have a lot of those underlying things that the Wolves have too, that are both frustrating and then also like a little logical too. Obviously that Lakers team came into the season playing the long game. Yeah. And I think the Wolves have kind of too, like even if it subconsciously been doing that, but I think that'll at least be a good game. So I guess I now have both ends of that back-to-back, March 10th against the Lakers and March 11th against the Clippers. It'll be hard for the Wolves to win both of those games.
Right.
So I'll take both of them.
I'm going to go. I hesitated a little bit on this one just because their opponent is on a back-to-back, but it is a home back-to-back for the opponent. April 10th at Houston. Again, late in the season, Houston's likely going to be playing for seeding along with the Wolves if we assume that they're going to stay neck and neck the rest of the season. But I'll give Houston the edge there just because of honestly, just the fact that it's in Houston will probably tip that over a couple others that I have near it on the list. So
I might have pushed that one down too far because it's a back-to-back for Houston.
Yeah. I looked at that and I was like, I'm not going to, because I think the last time they played him, wasn't Houston also on a back-to-back, if I recall?
It was right before the Spurs. Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah. Houston was on a back-to-back and they still beat them. So let's go with that. haven't seen the Wolves really play this version of the Rock or play well against this version of the Rockets. They only had the one matchup. I believe they only play them 2 more times. They were one of the Western Conference teams that the Wolves played only 3 times this season instead of 4.
And one of the teams that they need to make hay against in the standings.
Absolutely.
You know? Like,
so they got to get up for those games. They got to get up for the Lakers. They got to get up for the Clippers, especially if, you know, conference record comes into play as a tiebreaker at some point as well. So yeah.
God, tiebreakers are so nuts. Like we're getting close to like that time of year where Matt Moore, Hardwood Paroxysm, is like constantly laying out the most.
Well, to that point, the Wolves don't really have, if you think about the teams around them in the standings, they don't really have great tiebreaker records against some of the teams that they're fighting against, like Denver, for instance. Yeah. They're already 1 behind on Houston. They already lost to the Lakers twice. Yeah. Right. So they're coming in a little bit behind the 8 ball when it comes to the tiebreaker scenarios. That's a good point. I didn't think Phoenix, they've already lost 2 games to Phoenix. And so, yeah, all these teams that are around them in the standings that they're fighting for position with, they're behind in terms of tiebreakers right now.
My next pick is the upcoming game against the Clippers as well. They play them twice on the road for the rest of the season. So I have the one on March 11th, and I'll also take the one on February 26th at LA against the Clippers. I think I put the other one above it in my rankings because it's a back-to-back for the Wolves, but I think it'd be better to play the Clippers later in the season. I think that would be a better thing. You know, let's see what goes on with any of this suspensions or anything to come out from their scandal that they're in right here too. But I threw that one on there for the same reasons I said before. You know, we just saw them play the Wolves really tough. You have a great version of Kawhi at the moment, and this game's in 7 days. So I don't know, maybe I had that a little bit higher than you did, but yeah, I don't feel great about the Clippers matchup.
Yeah. It feels like a total wild card. It really does. I'll go next one for the purpose of a little variety in my schedule and my list here. I'm going to go March 5th, Toronto.
Yeah, I had that next too.
Just because on the road, they were losing most of that game and Ant saved them in the 4th quarter, essentially. Team that just with their style of play tends to give the Wolves fits. Again, I think in the midst of all the consternation of the trade deadline and then the performances afterwards against New Orleans and the Clippers and the Rudy comments and everything, it got kind of overlooked, the fact that win at Toronto was kind of a nice win.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. I know there was a lot going on. Were they getting Giannis? Mike had just been traded, and then the games that happened afterward kind of overshadowed it. But looking back on it, that was a really nice win. Even if they didn't play well for 3 quarters.
Yeah, that's the part I struggle. I mean, you're not wrong. It was the 4th quarter was great. Like as good as Ant has looked with his teammates going with him. It wasn't like just Ant raised to that super duper star level, kind of similar to how he did against Denver on Christmas. But one of the most fun quarters, I think, just basketball viewing of the season. But I don't know, that one and the loss to Wemby where they had the big comeback. They're down 25 at halftime, and then it's Ant Wemby. Again, incredible Ant, but I get a little caught on the fact in that Spurs game that they were down 25 at halftime. I get caught on how the first 3 quarters of that Toronto game was. But I had it up there too. Toronto's a solid team, you know, that's definitely going to be playing for something. It is a home game, but I think we're starting to enter the home game zone here.
Right. And it matters. The quality of opponent to me at this point on our draft matters more than I think whether a game is on the road or not.
And that's why for my next pick, I did Houston, the home game against Houston on March 25th. It is at home. No back-to-backs or anything there, but it's a good opponent. You know, it's a game they're going to need to bring it to be able to win, which, you know, I think is likely you get from Ant in a game against Kevin Durant. And so this is pushed down there, but Houston's a good team. They could lose that game. I did have it over the road game at Houston.
You had the home game over the road game?
Yeah, I don't know. That might be me over
for the back-to-back.
Yeah, okay. overrating the back-to-back. The two on my board were Houston, right here back-to-back, and my big board, and the second one is a back-to-back there. But yeah, I'm taking March 25th home versus Houston for my next game.
I'm a little worried about my next pick.
Can we pause really quick?
Yes, go ahead.
Because so that's we've each picked 6, so that's 12. Just
games.
About half the rest of the schedule. And we're talking about at the end, like the median games for the rest of the schedule being a home game against Houston, who's currently the 4 seed, and Toronto, who's currently the 4 or 5 seed in the East. I think that goes to show that there's a lot of
either or games.
Difficult,
either or games.
Either or
games.
Good way to put it.
Like if you don't bring it, you're gonna lose.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't get away with, I don't know, like a subpar Ant and Julius game where Rudy saves them, like he might have at points last season, right?
Often,
like
at the end of last season.
Like that's not going to cut it against a lot of these teams. So that's exactly right. We are halfway through this exercise, and even still, I think there's a couple that are still on this list where it's like, I could easily see them losing this game if they don't play at least a B to B+ version of themselves.
It's just a harder post All-Star break schedule than it was last year. That's just a fact of the matter. Keep going.
To your point about the Philly back-to-backs, Philly's coming here on this weekend. But they're on a back-to-back after coming from New Orleans. So I don't know what their plan is going to be in terms of resting or sitting people. Do they take a guaranteed win essentially against New Orleans? Do they do it that way where they play their guys against New Orleans, but then they come here and rest people? Or do they try to say, let's roll the dice against New Orleans and then try to win again in Minnesota?
I don't know.
So I'm gonna go February 22nd against Philly here. I'm going to take that one. Just because if Philly has their roster somewhat playing, then let's go with that.
Yeah, I would, when I was doing it, I remember when I'm putting this together yesterday afternoon, there was some that, Embiid isn't playing in their first game out of the break, but it isn't like, it's like shin soreness or something. I mean, he's really touching every body part here.
Correct.
At this point, but I don't know. I struggle with that one a little bit back to back for Philly. But you're right. It's a good team. They're a better team than Golden State.
But even like with there's a structure, there's a style of play that whether Embiid plays or not, they can still be really good. Like they have the foundation there of being good on a given night, no matter kind of who's playing. That's kind of what I would be banking on there in that sense.
Yeah, you're right. Because even if Embiid isn't playing, it's not a free game.
Right. It's not.
In a way that it would if like Jokic wasn't playing or something. And you're playing Denver. I did Golden State, like I said, for my next one, March 13th at Golden State, middle of that West Coast road trip that they're having. I think with Golden State, I don't know. It's really stood out to me when I've watched the Wolves play Golden State this year of how much bigger and more athletic they are than that team, than that Warriors team. The Warriors have seemed very outmatched in that match. I talk a lot, as I did before, when we were talking about Detroit and physicality. And I talk about the games that the Wolves might not have a physical advantage, specifically through Randall in the post, and that being a detractor. Well, there's games that go the other way too, where the Wolves are like clearly the physically imposing team in the matchup. And yes, they have Steph Curry. Yes, the Warriors are still trying. But that's how I push Golden State as low as I did, even though it's a road game there. But at this point, as the 14th pick, I'll take that.
Yeah. This next one, I'm debating between two as I look at my list that are very close to each other.
See if they're the same as mine.
I'm going to take deep breath. I'm going to take March 17th.
That's what I'm
home game against the Suns.
Yeah.
And the only reason I hesitate is because it is the 5th of a 6-game road trip for Phoenix, and it's a back-to-back. So the fatigue might really be setting in for Phoenix on this, but I don't know. They just seem to have this. It just seems to be one of those things where this year they seem to have the Wolves' number.
Physicality thing again.
Yeah. Physicality thing. Dylan Brooks, the whole thing, right?
No, I had that one up next on my board too. Even pushing it down, like, because I looked, I'm like, Phoenix, I had it up higher. Oh, it's a back-to-back. Oh, it's the 5th game in 6 games for them. Okay, push it down as far as possible. But I did still keep it ahead of the April 5th game against Charlotte.
That was the one I was debating about. April 5th.
I think that's kind of the line. Then from here on out, it's not exclusively non-playoff teams, but it's like
we got a couple Orlando games in there.
Yep, you're right. Those next week coming up. But I will take Charlotte on April 5th at home.
With the way Charlotte's been playing and their ability to put up points.
Sure.
And from what I remember, they did put up points even though the Wolves won earlier in the season. I feel like Charlotte still scored a lot on the Miles Bridges.
It's funny that you say this because I was trying to remember that game while I was doing this yesterday, and I was like, not a lot sticks to me from the Charlotte game.
But I think Miles Bridges had a big
he did
a big game for
he did.
For
You're
Charlotte,
right.
But the Wolves had a really good second half, and that was that. Dante broke his nose, or like
there you go.
That's when the Dante mask thing started.
See, this is why I have beat writers. Come on.
It's amazing how long ago that feels when you get to February, right? Like
for real.
Those random games in November that you just don't even barely register on your radar come mid-February.
Today's show is brought to you by Quince, Quince. And Quince is a clothing line that puts out everyday clothes that last. They sent me a quarter zip jacket, and it was one of those items of clothing where you kind of pick it up and you feel the quality when you hold it. There's like a weight to it. It feels like it's made out of premium materials, and that's because it is. That's what Quince does best. Premium materials, thoughtful design, and everyday staples that feel easy to wear and easy to rely on, even as the weather shifts. Quince has the everyday essentials with quality that lasts. Organic cotton sweaters, polos for every occasion, lighter jackets that keep you warm in changing seasons. The list goes on. And Quince is a company that works directly with top factories, so they cut out the middleman, so you're not paying for that brand markup, just quality clothing. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/DaneMoore for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/DaneMoore. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/DaneMoore. That is a funny thing too about only playing Eastern Conference teams twice too. Like it's literally more than 5 months separating their 2 games against Charlotte. Like that is one version of Charlotte, and this is going to be a very different.
And then they have how many Eastern Conference teams on here that they play twice the rest of the season? Like that's nuts. And segueing into my next pick, one of those teams, April 8th at Orlando. Wolves are on a tail end of a back-to-back. Magic should be playing for something at that point in the season. So, I know it hasn't been the year that Orlando has really envisioned after making the Desmond Bane trade, but it's still going to be a team that tries hard and is going to be playing for something at that point in the year. So when we get to this point in the schedule draft with only 10 games or so left here. Yeah. I'm going to take that as again, we're getting to the end of this thing, and the Orlando Magic, who are battling for 6 in the Eastern Conference, are among the easiest opponents on this remaining on the schedule.
That's a good point. Not free. Not free. And I know Franz is out here for a bit too, but that's a Orlando team actually really playing for something, and it's not that bad.
Right.
And my next pick is Portland. The one coming up here on February 24th.
Yep.
I think Portland is going to be one of those teams that runs through the line here the rest of the way. Right. I think they kind of showed some of that last year.
Yeah.
That they are one of those fringe playoff teams that I think sees value in getting there and getting the experience for some of their young players. I kind of like just Portland the rest of this season in general to have a winning record the rest of the way. So I wanted to kind of bump that up more, but the Wolves did just smack them recently.
Remember my thing about teams that the Wolves take personally.
Mhm.
It feels like Portland has entered that realm.
Why do you think that is?
Because of the Danny Avdia thing.
Yeah.
Julius really took that
Yeah.
personally.
Mhm.
And Jaden seemed to really take that personally.
Yeah.
So I think Portland has now entered ahead of they've entered like that Denver Phoenix slot from the last couple years of teams that the Wolves just want to crush. That became, I think that was apparent in that game before the All-Star break. I think Portland has entered that realm.
Yeah.
So
the Devin Booker realm, or not quite there? Yeah, he's in the Devin Booker realm.
That's what I mean. There was a level of disrespect, or like, we just don't like you.
Yeah.
We don't respect your game. There was a level of that to their performance.
That's
and
true.
when the Wolves get in that mode, they're often at their best.
Mhm. Yep.
And I think that's what I think Portland has entered that realm.
I like that call.
That being said, I'll take March 20th at home against Portland as my next pick. I'll take it over the remaining Orlando game just because, again, we're at that point in the draft now that you're just taking a decent team over what's left.
I'm going to grab the last road game that is not against the tanking team. March 30th at Dallas.
Yeah.
I think the Wolves will win that game, but it's a road game. You know, that should be factored in when comparing it against a home game against Orlando, even though Orlando's a better team. You know, like it puts it in that field.
I'll take March 7th at home against Orlando.
Okay.
And now we're at the
Orlando.
Yeah.
And so then I guess I'm taking tomorrow's game, home against Dallas.
Dallas, yep.
Put that in there. Again, these are games I anticipate the Wolves to win, but I'm kind of looking for little pratfalls.
And now we're down to the last four here. I'll take, just because of the last four teams, they don't have their pick, and they've shown they can beat in the Wolves. I'll take last day of the regular season at home against New Orleans.
Yep. I kept that one against the above the three tanking team ones as well. Now all we have left is home versus Utah, home versus Memphis, and at Indiana. I will take the home versus Utah game.
I'll take at Indiana.
And the home versus Utah game is the back-to-back.
Yes.
Put that in there. You will take Indiana on April 7th.
Yep.
That will be a heavy tanking from them on April 7th. And that leaves me with the last one, home versus Memphis, who, Memphis wasn't all that daunting when they played them a couple weeks ago, but is significantly less so now after trading Jaren Jackson Jr. So that will they'll be Mr. Irrelevant.
There we go.
In this draft here. That's we'll keep these. I'm not going to read off the ones that we each all have, but I hope for the audience, because it was helpful for me to contextualize what the hard schedule is. And I think when we took that break in the middle, to kind of highlight, you get half of these games are relatively difficult. And I don't know, maybe only 8 of them are like easy. So that's that again, a difference from a season ago. From
a logistical standpoint, I will say this is a generally a favorable schedule for the Wolves, just from a number of back-to-backs, travel. Like the travel is very intuitive and it makes sense. Last year, if you remember, they had a road trip that began in Denver and then went to Brooklyn. Like, that's not fun.
Yeah,
that's not fun for the team.
To drive 45 minutes to the airport in Denver and then get on the flight
and go to New York. The whole thing. But when they travel out west, they stay out west, and they have 2 West Coast road trips, Western road trips the rest of the season. And then once they play that game against Golden State on March 13th, they are done playing games in the Mountain and Pacific time zones for the rest of the regular season. It's Central or East the rest of the season. And then they finish the season with 6 of their last 8 on the road. That's where it gets a little maybe fatigue heavy, just because in that stretch, there are also 2 road back-to-backs in there. So the month of March is actually a very easy travel-wise schedule for them. And when they go east late in the season, they stay out east. They're not coming back or anything like that. But they do have 2 back-to-backs in there.
I think that's the I was going to mention this earlier when you were talking about the schedule matters and fatigue, and we're allowed to, when we're covering games, we're allowed to go into the locker room for like a half hour before the game, like 45 minutes or an hour before the game starts. And I know you would echo this as well. When we go in there at that time and they're in the middle of a road trip or it is a back-to-back, you can see the fatigue on the players at that time. It's different than when they've had a day off and it's a home game and they're back there. It's a different energy. There's way fewer headphones in and guys just kind of like looking like they just woke up from their nap, which they did, you know. This does matter. You know, this stuff does matter, at least to the end that I've connected dots of being in the locker room before games, picking up on what the energy vibe was, and then seeing it on the floor. There's been plenty of times that energy matched it. Not exclusively. I mean, sometimes they turn it up and overcome that. I think I remember the New Orleans games when we were out there in New Orleans. It seemed like a pretty dreary locker room before. It was a long road trip.
Yeah.
And you know, and they turned it up for one of those games and won it in a big way. So it's not impossible to be tired and to win. I'm just saying we can see when they're tired before the game in person there. And I'm sure it shows up on the broadcast as well.
That's right. But I think one of the lessons that this team constantly reminds us of is even under those circumstances when it may seem rested, this and that, they still can come out flat.
Yeah.
And then there are times where the schedule is against them or it's a back-to-back, whatever, and then they come out and play well and win. So they have shown the ability to rise above that or fall below the rest factor, quote unquote, when it comes to how the schedule plays out for them. And it's one of the kind of head-scratching things about this team sometimes, but
critical to overcome.
Critical to overcome.
If they want to get up the standings.
So I think in a weird way, just based on how this season has played out for this team, the problems that have persisted, I think the fact that they have a high quality of opponent most of the nights, the rest of the way, is generally a good thing for this team. They have to ramp it up now. And when they see in front of them Houston twice, Detroit twice, Philly twice, OKC's on the schedule, you got Toronto, like you have all these teams, Celtics. I think it's going to help. I think it's going to help when they sometimes they don't know who they're playing next on a given night. They may not know who they're playing 2 nights later or 3 nights later, but when they get done with one game and they see that, oh, we're going to Boston next, shoot.
Right.
Like, got to be up for that one. Oh, we're going to Houston's coming to town. Oh, got to be up for that one.
Right.
Like, I think there's going to be a good mentality game to game for this team with this schedule that they're going to need come mid-April once the playoffs begin.
No, that's a good point. And it's, again, just going to be however hard the schedule is, whatever, all the, compared to last season, this is the schedule. And they probably need to go like 18-8, like they did against an easier schedule last season, to be able to, be back similarly seated and go on a run again. But it's stacked up against them a little bit more than
let me
previously.
ask you, let's look ahead a little bit when it comes to playoff seeding and positioning here. The Spurs are only 3 back of the Thunder right now. For the longest time, we've kind of been talking about playoff seeding on the assumption that Oklahoma City was going to be the 1 seed, and you're kind of gaming it to like avoid Oklahoma City, get to the 3 seed,
right,
and then get the Spurs in round 2, avoid Oklahoma City into the conference finals. Well, there's a very real chance that the Spurs can catch the Thunder down the stretch here. And so does that change do you want to be then on the 4-5 line potentially in that scenario? Do you, do you still want to be going for 3. You know what I mean? Like, does the fact that the top could potentially change the rest of the way affect where the ideal place where the Wolves might want to slot themselves come the last day of the regular season?
I think you're right to bring it up, because the Thunder are not whole right now. You know, they're having actually a very injured season.
They are.
You know,
they really are.
And their record doesn't really indicate that. I feel like when I hear people talk about the Thunder now, it's like, oh yeah, they started off really hot and now they've really slowed down. They're not that good of a team anymore. And it's like, well, there's injuries that happened in that stretch of time as well. But to your point about seeding, like, they're not back at 100%. I think San Antonio largely is healthy. Like, it theoretically could happen. I just stand from a Wolves perspective of, like, I think it's important to get up there higher, the 3 seed, even if it was OKC at the 2. I don't know. I'm caught on the idea of doing as much as you can to avoid playing one of those Denver, Houston, San Antonios
in round one.
Sure. That's number one for me, but that's another externality that's important there too. And maybe that's an April sort of thing where some teams will start moving themselves around based on or resting guys to lose games based on the standings in April. So I don't know, I guess check back in on that closer to the date there, but it's a good thing to bring up.
Yeah, it's something to keep an eye on. Like, if San Antonio makes a really serious push for being the 1 seed, then it becomes a conversation.
It does.
And like you said, I mean, who knows if the Wolves become the 3 seed? Who's to say that Denver is not going to fall to 6? You know? Like, yeah. I mean, that's how jumbled it is in the Western Conference right now.
Like I said, they're 1.5 behind Denver, who's the 3 seed, and they're 1.5 ahead of Phoenix, who's the 7. It is, and in a week, it's going to be jumbled again, and it's gonna, it's going to be one of those closes to the season in the Western.
And I think it's going to be one of those closes where, and this happened last year too. Remember, they were fighting with Golden State to stay out of the play-in last year, and it seemed like they couldn't make up any ground.
Yeah,
like Golden State was having just as hot of a close of the season as the Wolves were.
True.
And it goes to your point of, well, everybody kind of has the tanking teams on their schedule at this point in time. It's a matter of how many games you have against them, how well you're playing. So it could be one of those closes to the season where maybe in some ways the only time you make up ground against a certain team is if you beat them, or they're playing each other, like Denver plays Houston, or the Lakers play the Rockets, whatever. Like, only when they're playing each other is somebody going to lose.
Yeah, we
could see a lot of stretches like that where you're looking at the scoreboard on a given night and you're like, Denver won, Houston won, the Lakers won. This didn't help the Wolves at all.
Right. No, which heightens the importance of those games coming up against those against those teams. Like the Denver game, which was my first pick, is the 4th game in a 4-game road trip, or third game in a 3-game road trip for them in Denver. That's going to be a hard trip, but like the most important game of that trip is the game against Denver, because you not only can get a win, you can get a team ahead of you a loss in there. So whatever, this will be fun to track for the rest of the way. Can we close the episode by closing the loop on this weird Mike Conley saga? He has officially been re-signed by the Timberwolves. We're going to practice after this, and at least get a chance to talk to Finch about Mike, and hopefully we'll get to talk to Mike as well, and I'll play clips from that in a future episode. But can you briefly retell the story here, and I can fill in some gaps too of what happened with the trade of Mike Conley?
Right. So 2 days before the trade deadline, the Wolves deal him to the Bulls in a 3-team trade with the Pistons, where they gave a pick swap this year to the Pistons, and we were all kind of scratching our heads at like, well, what is this for the Wolves? What is this deal exactly? And it turns out we thought maybe a precursor to a larger move of, everybody was excited about Giannis at the time. Turned out it was the precursor to the Ayo Dosunmu trade, because it saved them money. It was essentially a money trade, as we found out, to get them under the first apron which then allowed them to take on, under league rules, more money in a subsequent trade with the Bulls to get Ayo Dosunmu. Without making this trade first and having it be officially processed first by the league, because it was made official later that day, the Wolves would not have been able to take back more money in a trade because they would have been over the first apron.
Yep.
So that enabled them at the deadline to make the Ayo Dosunmu trade. Then the Bulls trade Mike to Charlotte in a deal for Colin Sexton, and who did the Bulls send out in that trade? They sent out Mike.
They got Kobe White.
Kobe White, right.
Yeah.
So that goes to Charlotte, and then the Hornets buy out Mike, which then enables him to re-sign with the Wolves, because now Mike has been traded twice. Under league rules, you are not eligible to re-sign with a team that trades you unless you've been traded a second time. And so that's where Mike Conley comes back to the Wolves, because he was traded a second time before the deadline, now eligible to re-sign with the Wolves, and he's back. And I think in talking to people, I don't know if this was expected.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
I don't think it was. And the way they talked about it in Toronto, it didn't seem like this was a done deal.
It was not like a premeditated,
like, here's
thing.
What we're gonna do.
Yeah,
right.
They did
but
not know.
It was a possibility.
Yes.
They
did not know that Mike was going to be traded again, which is what opened up the possibility to him coming back.
Yeah.
They had that on their radar.
Yes.
Thought that the Bull, I mean, logically, right? Do the Bulls need 38-year-old Mike Conley? Or are they just going to buy him out? And if they would have just bought him out, then the Wolves would not have been able to sign him.
Correct.
But because he went to Charlotte, that opened up the door. I want to go back to the first thing you said, because what I was trying to do and talk to some people yesterday was like, okay, there was a lot of stages to this at different times that presented different values. It presented value at a time that it maybe didn't totally show value in. They made the trade 2 days before to dump Mike's salary to get below the first apron, because that opened up the realm of possibilities, some of what they could do. For one reason in particular would be now they're allowed to take back more money in a trade than they were able to send out. Now, I don't know if that ended up being extremely functional in value. Like, yes, Dosunmu makes like $7.5 million. Julian Phillips makes $2.5 million. So collectively, they make more than Rob Dillingham and Leonard Miller do. So that trade, that transaction couldn't have happened without the Wolves being under the first apron. But what they could have just done is not take Julian Phillips back in the trade. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
They could have just done Rob and Lenny.
I think wasn't one of the, and pardon me if I'm getting this wrong, but wasn't one of Chicago's goals to get under the tax? Did this help Chicago get under the tax?
And it did. It's just, it's not like there was an impossibility of Chicago to have done that elsewhere.
Sure.
It was, I mean, it functionally helped them. Getting under the first apron functionally helped them do that. The reason they made the trade 2 days before is it opened up the band of possibilities of guys in that IO range that they could get, because a lot of those IO guys similar to IO that they were looking at had a bigger salary than Rob Dillingham.
Yeah.
You know, so they wanted to spread that as wide as possible to figure out, you know, if they were going to be able to get this, were they going to be able to get IO without trading a first round pick? That was not a known thing, right? The price ultimately ended up being less than a first round pick. They were able to go get them there. Now there was a cost, and to doing this and the greater optionality that I understand, but they did give a pick swap in this draft to Detroit, which means the Wolves are going to finish it with like the 23rd, 24th best record in the league. Detroit's almost certainly going to be 29th. So the Wolves are going to move back 5 or 6 spots. That was the cost of doing this business of getting below the first apron, which opened up some greater possibilities to get IO, opened up some possibilities of things that didn't ever come to fruition. It also opened up the possibility of them signing an expensive buyout guy.
Right.
To be below the first apron if the player makes more than the mid-level exception. I know this is complicated, but like a guy, like if Chris Middleton got bought out, the Wolves could now sign him because they're under the first apron. If they were not under the first apron, they wouldn't have been able to do it. So it's a bunch of little like pennies of opportunity that getting below the first apron got them. I don't think it's a lot of pennies in the pile there at the end of the day. They're pennies for sure. But the only real cost was moving back probably 5 or 6 spots in this.
And honestly, they may not be not all that upset with that move back because now you'll be picking at the end of the first round next year, and that's
a little cheaper.
It's a little cheaper, right? Exactly, for not maybe that much of a cost at that point in the draft.
And they could even trade like 29 for like 32, right? And now you have a guy in a second round pick contract, something like that. Maybe pick up a second there too. But point being is like that got them some more optionality. Mike ultimately did come back, which they view as a value. That's something they're very excited about it coming to fruition there. They do get Phillips, who I think has some intrigue to them as a future piece. And they saved a lot of real money in luxury tax money. And you know, that's going to be labeled in some ways as, oh, the owners are saving money. And that's true. You know, it was a cost-cutting move. To some extent, that was one of the pennies. But it does help to save like $25 million in luxury tax money to be able to use that $25 million more functionally, like a year down the line.
Correct.
I don't think we can like kill ownership for doing that until we see them not reinvest that money back in the team.
I agree.
Down the line.
And that's why, you know, I think it's incumbent that they re-sign Io to make. Yeah, there's a pressure to have Io here long term because of that. Number one, and because of everything that you gave up in the first place to get Rob, and now Rob becomes Io, and so you don't want everything that you gave up to get Rob to then become 30 games in one postseason run of Io DeSumo.
Right. That would
ultimately be the legacy of this deal if they don't re-sign him, and that would not look good from a long-term perspective. So to me, they have to re-sign Io DeSumo to make all this worth it at the end of the day.
One more thing of a value, and these trade exceptions don't always come to fruition, but they do create a $10.8 million trade exception that they could use in the future for Mike Conley's what his salary was. So theoretically, this summer they could acquire a $10.8 million player or less without needing to send back money. Sure. Right. So they could go get, you know, some sort of free agent or player who's making like $10 million. Then that's something they wouldn't have had access to. They had Nikhil's $7.8 million trade exception, but that was going to expire. That would expire 12 months afterwards. That would expire this summer. So they do have this trade exception in the future, which I would strongly assume that'll be used at some point over the next 12 months to bring in a player who costs, you know, close to $10 million. But I don't want to overrate the value of what they did here either. I don't think this was like some crazy loophole that led to some incredible thing that they were able to do. I think maybe, you know, you run the simulation on that trade deadline 100 times, maybe it leads to something unique that is directly a product of having made this salary dump of Mike. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to over exaggerate. Like, this was some wizardry salary cap management. I know it was difficult for them to get this all done, and as a credit to Tim in the front office for having the connections to be able to make a move like that. But yeah, you know, let's not over. Like for example, I thought trading up to get Rob Dillingham when they did 2 seasons ago at that time was a more creative salary cap move than what this was. This one was marginal. But
margins matter.
Yeah, for sure.
Margins matter. And that extra, and listen, you look around the league, and I think this is a point that has been driven home in my 8 years of covering the league. and I hear it from other reporters and people around the league, not every ownership is Steve Ballmer that can just keep writing checks, right? That's true of almost the entire league, right? So saving money that you can then, like you said, as long as it gets reinvested down the line and you maintain a competitive team and you're not looking to cut corners or cut costs, or, you know, when you have a real chance to go for it, you go for it. You know, ownership, there's ownership in the NBA that they're constantly looking to save that money. But now you got to reinvest it. Now you got to make sure that you use some of that $20 million to make sure Ayo Dosunmu is here going forward.
And I think the operating assumption with this ownership group, based on past behavior, should be that they will. They paid $92 million in luxury tax last season. That's on top of the $150 million in salaries or whatever, right? Like they paid. These are cash savings or cash spends, right? Luxury tax is a check if you're ownership that you write at the end of the season, and a luxury tax savings like the Wolves did, like the Celtics did, like a lot of teams ducked the aprons or the luxury tax altogether. The Wolves didn't even dodge the luxury tax altogether. They're going to still pay a small luxury tax payment this season. So I'm just, based on the track record of this ownership putting money into stuff, I'm not going to sit here and assume that they're not going to reinvest that $25 million they're saving here. And if they do, we'll talk about it, right? You know, if it's a pattern of going the other direction, and I just don't think we know it's the other direction.
Correct. You know, I know there's angst in the fan base about the season tickets, and rightfully so. A lot of fans saw their season tickets go up, but at the end of the day, if you reinvest in the product, you keep a contending team on the floor. You know, I think this fan base is also scarred by what's a lot of people who root for the Twins have seen what's happened a couple steps away.
Good point.
At Target Fields, where they came off of, you know, winning a playoff series, and then ownership was cutting payroll the next season. And so there's a little bit of the Minnesota fan fatalism in there, and they have a recent example to point to of that happening. So there's concern and stuff like that, but I feel like it's set up well to, in that way, make sure that Ayo Dosunmu's here. You have, you know, a team that's going to be competitive. You can't do with Ayo this summer what you just did with Nikhil. Correct. You got to pony up and pay.
And they should be able to,
because the Nikhil deal, there are other complicating factors that would have put him back into the second apron. The whole thing, but this time around, they can avoid that, and they have to take that road.
Absolutely, yeah. And we'll track that at the next transaction window. But this is an organization that views itself as a contender, probably more than it realistically is. If I'm being honest, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I would be shocked to see some sort of pivot away from putting a contender out on the floor again next season, regardless of what happens the rest of the way. Ant's going to be 25. I think they know the assignment here. Like, you got a superstar. We need to be operating on the margins all the time to maximize that. They didn't hurt their team in any way by doing these things. Mike's back, you know, and some people would say that's right, but you know, they don't view it that way. They view that as a value of Mike coming back. Nothing functionally
that need
changed.
Quotes view it as a value that Mike is back.
Right. Yeah, that's true too. And related, Johnny Juzang was waived yesterday. He ran out of two-way days on his contract, so they were in a position where you had to give him a rest of season contract or not. I think he looked at the depth chart here. And even if he got that rest of season contract, was unlikely to, you know, crack the rotation. And anyway, we just talked about this team getting kind of deep all of a sudden once Terrence Shannon Jr. and some of those other guys come back. So I don't think Johnny Juzang has another team lined up yet, but theoretically, more opportunity out there elsewhere. Was a good guy. I know we talked to him a handful of times in the locker room. But functionally for this team, it does open up an open roster spot for a buyout guy. And also a two-way spot. Maybe they elevate one of their G League guys into that into that two-way spot. But yeah, open two-way spot, open final roster spot. The Wolves will be doing something at the end of the roster there, but I don't think that's imminent, because I kind of thought the Juzang waving, I was like, oh, am I about to get another notification here?
Right.
And from people I talked to last night,
he was out of days at the end.
Yep, he was out of days.
So that's what precipitated that. Yeah.
Open two-way spot, open final roster spot. We'll see. And I think there's kind of 2 weeks here, or I guess February is only a 28-day month, so 9 more days that they can kind of make a move there to get a buyout guy and have him be eligible for the playoffs. We'll see what happens there. I was told last night nothing like imminent.
Right.
Is right there. But cool. I'm glad we were able to close the Conley loop. Kyle and I are going to record on Saturday, and I'll try and play some clips from what Mike or Finch said there. Obviously, you can read Chris, or I'm sure I'll put some on Twitter and stuff like that too. That's kind of the next thing coming up here. Is practice today, and then they play. We're back at it. They play on Friday against Dallas, and we'll see what happens there. Well, we got to go to practice here pretty quick, but you got any final things?
No, just a reminder, come on out Saturday afternoon, book signing, Uptown Barnes & Noble. Come on by, bring your books, buy a book for a friend, family member, and we'll chat a little bit as well.
Love it. Appreciate you coming in. Thank you for getting us to do this, reminding me that we did this exercise yesterday. I hope for listeners, even it was maybe a little difficult to follow without a schedule in front of you, that we highlighted the goal, which was half the games are pretty tough here the rest of the way for the season. And like Chris said, that might be a good thing for this team. I will make a shared spreadsheet that we can track this the rest of the way. And
very exciting.
I don't know, where are we going to be in the first round of the playoffs? If it were today, it'd be Denver. Yeah,
the most cost efficient of the
exactly
playoff locations.
If I don't know, I might need to back out if it's a LA first round matchup. You guys can you can follow everything Chris is doing on Twitter at Christopher Hine, the newsletter. You can sign up for free, and then just subscribe to his coverage and the Star Tribune in general for some local journalism. Appreciate you coming on. Like I said, for listeners, the next episode is going to be actually Saturday morning. Kyle and I are going to record after the Wolves' first game back against Dallas on Friday night. So until then, with Kyle, he's Chris, I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah. Hope you dancing like